Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi, my name is Heny Apriliyani. I'm from 6A semester of English Language Education Part-Time Study Program. Here I will do my mid-semester exam assignment from the Language Assessment Development course with the topic of the type test. Let's continue. So, before that, what is language testing? Language testing is a broad category of testing that assess aspect of a person's ability to understand or communicate in particular language. Language testing is used for a variety or purpose. In academic settings, language testing can assess a student's current abilities or progress for the purpose of academic placement. In professional settings, language testing can determine whether a candidate has the language skill needed for a job. Whatever the context, language assessments can effectively measure a person's language abilities. There are 5 main types of language assessment: aptitude, diagnostic, placement, achievement, and proficiency test. Number 1 is aptitude test. Aptitude refers a person's capacity for learning something. Language aptitude test assess a person's ability to acquire a new language skill. Because of the nature of this test, they are more general than most other language tests and don't focus on a particular language in test. They assess how quickly and effectively a person is able to learn new language skill. An employer might use an aptitude test to select the best employee to take language course so they can aid in the study of a new international phrase or provide bilingual customer service. Then number 2 is diagnostic test. Diagnostic tests are made at diagnosing the state of a person's ability in a certain area, in this case. The language ability in contrast to achievement and proficiency tests. Diagnostic tests are typically given at the start of a language learning course or program. On a diagnostic test, most test takers encounter questions or tasks that are outside the scope of their abilities and material they're familiar with. On a diagnostic test, most test takers encounter questions or tasks that are outside the scope of their abilities and the material they're familiar with. The result of the test reveal the strength and weakness in one's language abilities. Having a student diagnostic test result can help teacher formulate lesson plan that fill the gap in students' current capabilities. Students can also use diagnostic tests to determine which areas they need to work on in order to reach a higher level or proficiency. Number 3 is placement test. Placement tests share some similarities with diagnostic tests. They are used for educational purpose and are administered before a course or progress of study begins. In this case, the application is a bit different. Education and administration use placement tests to group language learners into classes or study groups according to their ability levels. A university may give a placement test to determine whether a new phrase major needs to take introductory phrase course or skip over some course and begin with more advanced classes. Placement tests are also an important type of test in English language teaching at the university level. Since international students typically come in with different English language background and proficiency levels. Number 4 is achievement test. An achievement test evaluates a student's language knowledge to show how their learning has progressed. Unlike diagnostic tests, aptitude, and placement tests, achievement tests only cover information the students should have been exposed to in their studies thus far. Achievement tests are typically given after a class completes a certain chapter or unit or at the conclusion of the course. A language teacher might give a final exam at the end of the semester to see how well a student has retained the information they were taught over the course of the semester. Achievement tests are typically graded and are made to reflect how well the language tester is performing in their language learning studies. And then, proficiency tests. Proficiency refers to a person's competency in using particular skill. Language proficiency tests assess a person's particular language skill. Proficiency tests share some similarities with achievement tests, but rather than focusing on knowledge, proficiency tests focus on the practical application of that knowledge. Whereas most of the tests we've looked at are primarily associated with academic context. Proficiency tests are useful in a variety of settings. Anyone can take language proficiency tests regardless of how they learn the language and where they believe they are in their level of competency. Anyone can take language proficiency tests regardless of how they learned the language and where they believe they are in their level of competency. Proficiency tests accurately measure the candidate's ability to use language in real-life context. And last, it's about standard for test design. Standards include an expanded discussion of issue of test design that should be addressed before test development commences. This perspective builds on the concept of evidence-centered design that begins with consideration of claims to be made on the basis of test results and then procedure to inform the design of the test so as to provide evidence to support these claims. Support for validity is central to test design. The standard begins with the chapter on validity and provides a general, overarching standard that specifies that is claimed for an intended score interpretation for a specific use should be accompanied by validity evidence to support such claims. Specifically, test development should clearly articulate the contract the test is designed to measure and how each test score is intended to be interpreted and used. Coupled with information about the population for the scores intended interpretation for such use. So that's all that I can deliver in my mid-test today. Thanks for your attention. Last I say, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.